Let me encourage you this morning to find your sermon notes. Follow along as we go. Fill in the blanks if you like. Most importantly, to live the message that you hear. So, 23rd Psalm. How many of you have heard that one before? Probably all of us. It's probably one of the very first passages of Scripture that we memorized back in the days when we actually memorized stuff. And we probably heard it at more funerals than any other particular passage. I was looking through the 300 or so funerals that I've done, and I probably have preached on the 23rd Psalm about a quarter of the time. That's quite a few 23rd Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And yet, I would suggest that we don't always understand exactly what the psalm is all about. Maybe understand, but not appreciate. So let me illustrate. It's an old story, one I'm sure that you've heard before somewhere along the line. It's about the guy who was stranded in a flood, and the waters were so high that he had to go and climb up on the roof. And yet he was not afraid because he knew the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. In fact, he felt like he had heard from God that he would protect him no matter what. And so as he is there up on his roof and the waters are rising, there is a deputy sheriff who comes by in a small motorboat. And he says, "Climb in and we can go to safety." And of course the man says, "No." Why? Because the Lord is my shepherd and he will protect me. Well, the waters continue to rise, and well, it isn't long before there is another boat, this time a pontoon boat. And again, the rescuer yells, "Come on in, come to safety." And the man says, "No, I don't need you. After all, the Lord is my shepherd and he will protect me." Now the water is almost up to the top of the roof, and it looks like the man is not going to be saved. But then all of a sudden he hears the thump, thump, thump of a chopper. There's a helicopter, a rope comes tumbling down, and a voice says, "Just climb on up to safety." And of course the man says, "No. After all, the Lord is my shepherd and he will protect me." Well, ultimately, the man drowns. And there he is, all wet and very angry in front of the pearly gates. And he says to St. Peter, "I'm only here because the Lord did not keep his promise." And then a voice thunders from behind the gates. And it says, "I sent you a sheriff's deputy. I sent you a pontoon boat. I even sent you a helicopter. What more do you want?" Right? The Lord is my shepherd. It is a psalm of faith in God's ability to protect and to provide. And yet it's not always in a way that we immediately see. This morning I'd like to go very quickly through each phrase of the psalm. You can do it in your mind to show that God covers the past, the present, and the future. Each aspect of our lives. It begins, the Lord is. Not was, not might be, not will be. He is my shepherd. And so I shall not want. I have everything I need. He makes me to lie down, just kind of like in kindergarten. You remember those days? As a little person, you thought you could go all day, and yet you got tired. Thank God for those wise teachers that made us lie down, not on cots in this case, but in green pastures in a place that is fertile and relaxing and allows us to be ourselves. He leads me. I don't have to find my own way by the quiet waters because sheep, as you know, can't drink from a rushing stream. He restores my soul because there are times when I need restoring. I get discouraged, I get depressed, I get down. He restores my soul, my mind, my body. And he leads me then in these paths of righteousness, not because I'm so special, truly, but he is. After all, he's the shepherd. And it is his role, it's his responsibility, it's his duty. He loves and he cares for the sheep. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you've been there, right? I've been there. When you feel like your soul is wrenched and drained like a sponge. And there's evil all around us, including the evil one. And yet it's like I'm there at a banquet table. He has the rod and the staff, the tools of a shepherd to protect me. My enemies cannot harm me. All they can do is sit there and watch as I feast on all the blessings that the Lord gives me. He anoints my head with oil, this ancient ritual of blessing. And my cup overflows with all the good things that the Lord would give to me. And surely goodness and mercy, which have followed me all the days of my life, will continue, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We know the psalm. It covers the past and the present and the future and even into eternity. And we can end right here, right? Flows nicely. Little 3-point package. But I think as we go through this psalm this morning, that if we're honest, at least if I'm honest, I had to make a few major mental leaps. Did you? Have you ever thought about this? When you go through the psalm, it seems to change cadence about halfway through. I mean, in the beginning, we're the sheep, like we heard in the children's message. God's the shepherd. Green pastures, quiet water. The rod, the staff, they comfort me. But then all of a sudden, can you imagine a sheep concerned with righteousness? These paths of righteousness? Now, I was listening to the children's message. What were some of those favorite animals? Pigs. I'm a pig guy myself. You know that. I don't know, maybe sheep are different, but none of my pigs on the farm were ever concerned with righteousness. Or a banqueting table, our pigs had troughs. So did our cows. In fact, sometimes we didn't even give them a trough. We just put the feed or the hay right on the ground. So something seems to be a little bit off here. Can you imagine any of these animals, a pig, a sheep, a horse, ruminating over its own end in the valley of the shadow of death? Our pigs didn't know when they were going to slaughter, I assure you. It was a big surprise when it happened. So we begin, God is the shepherd. But he's no longer the shepherd, but rather he is the host of a traveler. So to help you this morning in understanding who the shepherd is and what the psalm is all about, let's provide another explanation. So, in our reading today, we use the King James Version. That's typically what I do at funerals. because that's what a lot of us have grown up in. However, in the Hebrew, and I am not a great Hebrew scholar, however, in the new translations, in the NIV or the ESV, which we often read here, there are some different phrases. It's no longer the paths of righteousness, but it's the right paths, which is a better rendering of the Hebrew. And it's not the valley of the shadow of death, but rather it's the darkest valleys, because not all valleys lead to death. So this interpretation has its roots in the original Hebrew. So let's imagine then that the narrator is not picturing himself, King David, though he is a shepherd, he's not picturing himself as a sheep, but rather as a lost and lonely traveler. So can we do it again, just real quickly? Now, you're not a sheep. And actually, I kind of like that, because sheep are dumb. I don't like that analogy very well, even though it may be true sometimes. But now I'm a traveler. I'm in the desert. All you have to do to imagine that is go outside, and you know what it feels like. But now the sun is bearing down, and I'm hot, and I'm thirsty. But here's the thing about the desert. It's hot during the day, but in the night it gets extremely cold. And the temperatures can drop 70, 80, 100 degrees. And now the cold is beginning to envelop me. And the sun is going down, and I can't see the road anymore, and I don't really know where I'm going. This is different territory. And as the sun begins to set, I hear the howl of the jackal. And all kinds of images are conjured in my mind, not just of wild animals, but bandits and robbers and all kinds of evil creatures. But then, as the sun is setting, I see a silhouette there on the hillside. It's a shepherd. Just a common, ordinary man, but someone who knows this country. And he comes down to me, and he embraces me, and I'm a little bit afraid at first because I don't know this guy. But he seems genuine. And he leads me to this green pasture to rest. And I notice it's truly an oasis. Palm trees swaying in the breeze. And he goes to the still waters, and he cups it in his hand. And he brings it to me, and I drink. And I'm filled. And then after a bit of a rest, he leads me on the right path, one that I couldn't find on my own. And he leads me to his tent. It's just a plain black goat-covered tent. An whole settlement of tents. You see, he's a Bedouin, and they have found this land. They have carved out this living in the desert. And he takes me into the tent, and because it's the Middle East, the hospitality, the code is that once you're inside the tent, you are a friend, you are family. And he would fight to the death to make sure that no one or nothing harmed me. And there we sit cross-legged at this low table. And this meal is provided. It's a simple meal. Stewed lamb, a little pita bread, some succulent dates. And it's the best thing that I have ever tasted in my life. And then, because it is Middle Eastern hospitality, he takes this flask of olive oil and he pours it over my head, and it runs down through my beard. And he collects what is left. And he bottles it as a reminder of the blessing that I received this day. But that's not all. There also is the wine, the overflowing, the never-ending, kind of like a Viking cruise. As we see this picture, I hope that you can receive the message. King David is the shepherd. Remember the king, but who has lowered himself to be a servant. He has promised to always be there for his sheep. And this is a psalm then that is there for us, it's there for you, and it's there for me. When we're feeling lost or helpless or alone, this is the psalm for when you're in pain, when you're filled with anxiety. It's for those sleepless nights when you conjure up all kinds of images of what might go wrong. It's for when you're in the hospital. It's for when your loved one is on their deathbed. It is for the funeral, and it's for the grieving that occurs later. Saint or sinner, it makes no difference what stage of life that you are in. We've all been there, and we all will be there again. And so here is the message. Put a big star by it, underline it, put it in yellow highlighter. The message of the 23rd Psalm is this: the shepherd is there, even if we fail to see his presence. The shepherd is there even when we don't feel like he's there, even when we don't see him, because sometimes he is a shepherd. Sometimes he's a cab driver, or a banker, or a teacher, or a nurse, or a doctor. Maybe mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or your Sunday school teacher, maybe even an occasional preacher. Who knows? But he's there. And as we look at the shepherd analogy, we see that this vision of a helping shepherd continues all through the Bible, from the Old, especially the 23rd Psalm, to the New, in John chapter 10, which we read this morning. And it is fulfilled, as the Old Testament is, in Jesus himself. Jesus Christ is the great shepherd who equips, and here again the analogy holds true, he equips us who are the sheep, even when we don't like the comparison, because we are dumb sometimes. We can't find our own way. We can't nourish ourselves with the goodness of the gospel. It needs to be fed to us. And yeah, sometimes we do fall over and we can't get up. And we need to be equipped to be shepherds and guides and leaders and servants of others. But he's not just the great shepherd, he's also the caring shepherd. When we remember how he leaves the 99 because they are safe. And there are times in our life when God's got us and we're safe and we don't need any extra care, but there's one over here who's lost. And so we muster all the resources of the church to go after that one that is struggling, that doesn't know their way, led by the good shepherd himself, who knows every one of his sheep, even when we've forgotten about him. And he lays down his life. We look at the cross and we know here's the message: the same God who would send his Son to die on the cross for us will not leave us at the time of our greatest need. He is there, even when we don't realize it. There was a famous actor at one time who was at a social gathering. He was at a party, and he was asked to recite some of the the great passages of literature, Shakespeare and Hemingway, Steinbeck and Peck and Frost. And he agreed to do it. And he read all these passages. But there was an old preacher there, and he wanted him to recite the 23rd Psalm, the one that we just heard a few minutes ago. And he agreed to do it on one condition, if the preacher would read it as well. And of course, the famous actor gives this dramatic reading with great emphasis and punctuating with the proper pauses. And when he was finished, there was great applause. And then the preacher read the same psalm. His voice was broken from preaching for over 50 years. At the end, he was hoarse, and the sound was barely a whisper. His diction was less than polished. And yet, at the end of his rendition, there was not a dry eye in the house. When asked about it, the actor said, "The difference is, I know the psalm. He knows the shepherd." My friends, get to know the shepherd. Know how much he loves you. Know that he's always there. Know that he will answer your cries and your prayers, and he will give you everything that you need. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me as they always have all the days of my life. And I am secure because I know that I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.